Today we're doing tracing to help obtain accuracy with this very small image. On the back of the image we have shaded, making sure not to miss any spots. When we trace, the objective is to be able to focus all of our energy on learning to show value. In this particular case, we'll be showing value with stipple technique. Now I'm going to zoom in nice and close so that you're able to see all of the details. Most people, when they are looking at an image to trace for the first time, are going to get the main details like the outline of the butterfly, but there's so much more involved. So everybody here has a different image. It is important to know that when you are outlining, sure, you can start with the outer edge, no problem. You must go very slow. If you try to go fast, you're going to miss. And if you're watching, you're going to miss those little tiny bumps in the edges. So whatever image you're working on, it is very easy to miss those fine little details. So what I'm doing with every single mark I make, I'm going over all of the little details, and I had to have a very well sharpened pencil to do that. So even in this little section here, do you see the change in value? Like for example, there's a little bit of a shadow, so it's a little bit darker. So when I say value, I'm talking about the lightness and the darkness of the object, not just the change in color. So what you're doing with this is going over every single detail. So I'm outlining even these teeny tiny little circles. Why am I going to spend the time to do that? Well, because when you are using the stipple technique, I prefer to have as much detail already on my picture before I apply any ink. Some of these details are so tiny and it's really hard to get into those tiny spaces. However, being able to pay attention to those tiny little details is something that'll become a little bit easier. It's not perfect when you're doing a very tiny image like this, but it's easy to miss little spots. So what I'm doing is really just taking my time so that I get all of that information. Now I'm going to work on the main body of this butterfly just to give you guys a couple of different areas that show specific detail. In his body, it has ridges right in here. You might be able to see them. I'm pointing to them. There's little ridges in his main body. So what I'm going to be doing is also making sure that I outline where I see those little ridges. Now, sometimes I've had students, when they're doing this project, I've had students who have said, oh, this is just way too small for me, or this is difficult to see. I can always make it bigger for you, but I usually start small. And the reason is when you're learning to understand stipple, it is really helpful for you to be able to start with something that's not so big, because there's a ton of details that we will be learning about and how to show all of that information. So just so you can get an idea, because you're just watching my pencil float across the page, you're not really seeing what the effect is. So I'm just going to lift this up real quick so you can see. Here is my traced image. This is what I have traced so far. So when you lift up your paper and you have it taped down, now you can see this is called a pencil transfer. You shaded the back of your picture, and now you're drawing on top of that picture, and the pencil marks from the back are transferring to your paper. So I like to look at the results of my tracing just to see if I'm doing a good job and to just kind of appease myself. Oh, that looks that looks nice. I like that. Or, oh, oops, I missed some details. So now I'm going to shift over to another section, and I'm working on the petals of this little flower, or I guess you should, the flower itself. Sometimes I'm outlining things that I don't fully understand. I don't fully understand what it is I'm looking at, but I'm looking at the shape. Do I see a circular area? Do I see little areas that just it's kind of a blob of a different color? I outline it. And those are really helpful hints for people who are outlining and tracing for the first time. Now, I've seen people trace many, many times in my classes, okay? It's not a big deal to me. What is a big deal to me is that you learn to understand that you're not just outlining the main outline. You're getting as much detail as you possibly can. So after I work on this little flower section and I flip it over, you're going to see what that hard work of trying to see and understand all of those teeny tiny details, that's going to really make your artwork look fancy and well drawn. But what this is also teaching you, some people may say, oh, this is cheating. You're not supposed to be teaching people to trace in an art class. Well, I disagree. I find it very helpful for beginning artists to pay attention to these very, very fine details. And I like to do it at the beginning because it's drawing your eye to things you maybe would not have noticed. So I really enjoy being able to look at other people's drawings when they've done this kind of tracing for the first time. I'm going to flip this over so I can see some of my details. All right. I have a lot of little teeny tiny details in that little flower there. You can't, it's not really clear. It's not super dark, but it's there. I don't want it to be super dark. I want it to be a nice light pencil line that I can visually see, because what's going to happen is you're going to be applying ink with the stipple technique in all of these different areas. And then we're going to be emphasizing it, showing contrast, showing the difference between the light and the dark areas. All right, so that completes our lesson for today. And our next lesson will include checking your work, making sure that you did not miss anything, and then also moving into the stipple technique.